iPhone, and an error occurred. Why did an error occur?
I don't know.
Oh, is that just for Facebook? Oh, okay. Now we're live everywhere.
Excellent.
Man, I miss watching The Simpsons. Anyways, I took her to a Verizon store to get a phone, and she got so like overwhelmed by getting a smartphone. She tried to leave me at the store.
But does she like it now, though?
Oh, she loves it. Can't go back.
Can't go back now. Yeah.
That's the thing.
For smartphones. Well, you know, I give her credit for holding out. How long did she hold out?
A long time, through dating, a couple years of me nagging at her, and then finally came around to it.
I like it, man. I like it.
Yeah. Welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. My name is Matt Williams. I'm co-hosted by the great A.D. Robles. How you doing, sir?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Has he got a water stiff drink there?
Nice water. Yep.
Nice water.
Ready to go.
I got a delicious blood orange and blackberry.
That looks pretty good. Looks pretty good.
Good old Costco, man. If you want to join the show and be part of it, and when I mean join it, I actually mean join. You can be part of it, watch live, ask questions, interact.
That's right.
We go live 7:30 p.m. Eastern Thursdays every time. And if you miss it, you can catch us Fridays. We are on all the podcast channels, YouTube, and all that good stuff. We are also on Patreon. You can support us at patreon.com/reformgelical. Yes, I got it right the first time. And if you want to guarantee that we will answer and discuss your comment, you can go over to YouTube and do one of those super chats.
Ooh, super chats.
I got my eye on there. I see the proverbial life right now over on the YouTube.
He's got his eye on the super chat.
Yeah, I do. That's my Jewish side. My Jewish eyes on that super chat. But you can comment wherever you're watching, Facebook, Twitter, and we may or may not, that if you don't pay for it, it's our prerogative.
That's right.
Looks like we're getting a lot of people. Welcome everyone. I am kind of tired, AD. I was up late watching Cross Politic do their live special after our very own Gabriel Wrench got arrested.
Yeah. I didn't watch it yet. I'm planning on watching it tomorrow. Was it good?
It was good in the sense that it makes you infuriated, but also you almost want to shed a tear of joy from just the beauty of it. Did you get to see any of the videos?
Oh, yeah. I did see some of the videos. And I also saw some tweets that from a very, very reliable source that said that this was all just one big publicity stunt. So what's the deal, man? That publicity stunt.
Oh my gosh. Did you see that article by the great R.C. Clark?
The Heidelblog one?
The Heidelblog one.
I didn't read it. Somebody sent it to me and I just couldn't bring myself to read it.
Oh yeah. I never really read it, but I always just skim over them when it talks about things. And it's just funny. He has a grudge against the man that shall not be named.
He's so jealous.
It's an article about this a situation that happened, but he spends the first half of the blog going through everything that has ever been accused of Doug Wilson. He married a pedophile. He had someone, had this issue, and he's federal vision. Had to drop the federal vision word in it.
Definitely federal vision. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. Listen. So honestly, at the end of the day, you have to understand that there are certain people in the world that are just deranged, and no matter what happens, they're just deranged.
Oh, I know, seriously. And then just seeing all the, the hall monitors, the federal vision hall monitors posts on Twitter. It's crazy, man. They flock together too. It's not just one deranged person. They come together.
The dynamic is a little weird too. It's like he's there, and then he's got these ladies that just hang on his every word. I mean, I don't know, man. There's something funny about that. That's just bizarre.
It is really bizarre and funny. Oh my gosh. All right. Mr. Scarpa has a great comment on YouTube. It's Marcus. I'm assuming Marcus Pittman. Help me make this connection. Nice guy, Russell Moore. Before I have to say, was our show prophetic, or does he watch our show? Because the very next day he fulfilled the caricature
of the nice guy
who got rejected on his date.
Listen, listen. So this weekend was a little rough for me. So I have this seasonal asthma thing where for 2 weeks, every season change, I have this horrible asthma. And this weekend, it was as worse as it's ever been. I had to go to the doctor actually. But man. Saturday, I'm I can't breathe. I'm wheezing up a storm. And I see this thing from Russell Moore. And I'm like, I gotta make a video. And I'm like, okay, I do the video. And I did the video like with half breath. And because it was just too good, little Russ Moore was just there in his little press suit. And he was ready to go on. And he was like, I'll talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And they're like, no. We've got our A-listers for that. We got our Chads for that one.
Well, okay, maybe next time.
Yeah, and then he was auditioning this week again for another spot. He was talking about how there's no religious test, and even a Muslim could be a Supreme Court justice. So that was a hardcore audition. He's like, CNN, I'm still here. Yeah. I'm still here. I can be against Coney, whatever her name is, too.
Yeah, you can tell me no as many times as you want, and I'll just be waiting for you. Yeah, it doesn't matter at all.
So what's this comment?
Oh, okay, so this is the comment. He says, so Russell Moore gets denied on CNN. But then Gabe gets the invite on Fox News for having, I don't know, he says for backbone, but I was going to say having some balls, because that definitely was some balls for sure.
Yeah, no. Oh, he's saying for acting like a man with a backbone, done what Big Eva is telling the Saints not to do. Gabe gets platformed by being a man Big Eva thinks will never get platformed. The Lord tells the best stories. Yeah, that's exactly right. And Marcus has made this point about John MacArthur too. It's like all these Big Eva people are selling their souls to get on CNN, and all you really had to do was just be a man and just be biblical, and that was it. And you can get on all the shows. You know what I mean? If that's what your desire is. Now I have no desire for that, but I'll tell you one thing. Let me just talk about this publicity stunt thing, by the way. So this was a peaceful protest on City Hall. That's what it was. They were going to go to City Hall and sing psalms. Is that accurate? I think that's what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it was a decision the day before by the church to sponsor it to do it. Yep.
Right, to sponsor to do it, sing some songs, peaceful protest, right?
3 songs, and then they were going to be out.
Right, and Gabe is running for office, right? Am I right? So okay,
so county commish.
County commish, running for office, and it's a peaceful protest. Okay. So the way that the Federal Vision Hall monitors seek to diminish this is to call it a publicity stunt. But let me just ask you a question. I mean, when you really think about it, a lot of people were offended by that. But when you think about what a protest is it not just a publicity stunt? Yes. So, like, what is the problem here? I just don't understand. It was contrived. Obviously, it was their idea to go to City Hall. What is the actual claim here? I think I know what it is, because they're the 2 women. I mean, they're women, so whatever. But R. Scott Clark knows that what he does is so irrelevant to everyone in the entire universe, except for his group of his little harem there.
Right.
What he says and does, there's people in a very small sliver of the humanity that care. Very small, and it's irrelevant to everybody else.
Right.
And so he's very upset that all Gabe has to do is some idiotic stunt. Let's just be honest. Some idiotic stunt. Let's call it as let's frame this as uncharitably as possible, right? All he has to do is some idiotic stunt where he's singing psalms unto the Lord, doing a peaceful protest, and he gets a lot of attention. And so that probably really chaps him a little bit.
Oh yeah,
he's working hard on these stupid articles. Federal Vision. Nobody even cares. Nobody cares. It's a joke. Nobody cares.
And, it's so funny. Those are the attacks too that I don't know why we are so attracted as Christians to losing arguments and losing thoughts and battle plans and logic. There was that one where it's like a publicity stunt. That's just another way of saying that you're getting traction and attention, and that you're influential.
Right. That's
I love that
problem. Yeah, they got publicity for this ridiculous mask order, and the fact that he's running for a commission or whatever it is, and the fact that they're singing psalms unto the Lord, regardless of what you say. It's a publicity stunt, and maybe you should try to figure out how to get a little more publicity to your little blog.
Someone said that Scott Clark still uses Windows 95. Everything is a threat. Well, yeah, and everything could be a virus because I don't even think that is maintained anymore.
Listen. I'm not the most tech savvy guy. In fact, before we jumped on live, I'm telling Matt I don't know how to use this iPhone, so I'm trying to figure this thing out. But listen, I'm not the most tech savvy guy, but Scott Clark is on Windows 95. That is accurate.
But yeah, so I don't know why we would think that this is a negative connotation whatsoever.
They're trying.
It's just so bad. And then the other thing that again I saw this week, And I don't know if we want to get into it or not, but there was like the praise of the one church that's suing. It was Jonathan Lehman's old church.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, I don't know her name. It's like the
Capitol Hill
antithesis
Baptist,
of Grace Baptist. Yeah.
Yeah, Capitol Hill Baptist. Yep.
It's the opposite of John MacArthur because Big Eva was celebrating it. So I know that it's the opposite of them.
Well, you know. Yeah, that's exactly all you need to know is that it's the opposite.
Exactly. But we've talked about this
right?
before, but we need to talk about it again because apparently this is what they're suing about. And it's a losing argument where it's a checkers game argument. It's the checkers game logic. And you're playing against an enemy that's playing chess. They're suing because they are not being treated equal to other entities. So they're not being able to come together and gather just like other businesses are and other protests and other assemblies are. And the church isn't being treated just like them.
Yeah.
And we just need to hit this again because it's a losing argument. One is you're already conceding ground. The very argument is an admitting you're losing and giving up ground because the First Amendment doesn't even make that argument. It just simply says the government shall not infringe against it. Loose quote, whatever it is. And then the second thing is even if you win, again, this is where the checkers part comes in. Even if you get the one move to get that one checker, you just set up precedent for them to say, okay, well, then we're not going to allow Bibles anywhere.
Right.
At your business, at the public city hall, and at your churches either. And then you're going to say, well, I don't know what to do now because he just kinged himself because now I'm being treated equal. So what's my argument to stand on?
Right.
It's like, why are we doing these stupid arguments?
Yeah.
Guys?
Well, listen. I'll just say this because I'm not petty like Big Eva, right? So I'm glad that they're doing something instead of nothing. Something is better, but you're 100% right. Like we can't play checkers when they're playing chess. Like it's not about being mistreated differently than a casino. It's not about being treated differently than whatever, a concert or whatever. That's not what it's about. It's about you don't have the right to tell me what to do in this issue. This is not your prerogative. It has nothing to do with you. So just leave us alone and we'll take it as far as we need to, but you just don't have the authority here. That's what it's got to be. It's got to be that. And if you want to make complicated arguments, fine, but you have to be ready to defend that. And the thing is, they don't actually believe that, so they won't defend it. And so that's why Russell Moore rushes to its defense. It's like, it kind of reminds me of just how everyone will they don't want to criminalize abortion necessarily, but they want to do these kind of like heartbeat bills and stuff like that because they can kind of rally around that for the rest of the time. It's a losing argument. It's and I'm not criticizing heartbeat bills, but what I'm saying is, like, if you want a heartbeat bill but don't want to criminalize abortion, you're not pro-life, man. You're just not, and you're not making a good argument. If you're doing it as a stepping stone to full criminalization, that's one thing. But the thing is that these people, Capitol Hill Baptist, ERLC, they actually do think that the government can tell you what to do in terms of worship. So it's a stupid play and it doesn't make any sense. And it's just so petty because you can see everyone come out of the woodwork. Even Joe Carter yesterday with his article, this is the model. This is the model for everyone to follow. Do this. Even though Jonathan Lehman said 2 weeks ago that there is no one model. No, definitely. Just hold on. We can do things differently. Well, not anymore. That was 2 weeks ago. Today, this is the model.
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing how that happened. And then it's kind of like, I don't know if I want to go this way, but okay, I'm just going to say it anyways. It's going back to the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. It's like the girlfriend starts complaining about you going to this certain restaurant and she's like really getting on you. And as boyfriend, you're like, I don't know why you're so upset about this, but it's really like a different issue, but it's just all built up. Yeah. And she's trying to, she's going after you. It's like you guys are making this equality argument, but that's not what it's about at all, guys. It's about something completely different. It's that you have no authority here.
Right.
That's what it's about. And if you don't go to that argument and if you don't go to that stand and make that fight, then you're going to be on really shaky ground.
Totally.
And I don't know why we trust them for the pro-life argument or anything else when they cannot think that far ahead. I'm not a legal scholar by no means. I'm not a lawyer. I don't study this stuff, but just common sense that this is not the smartest thing in the world. So why are we having these people represent us and be the thought leaders for us? It makes no sense.
Oh man, we got some people asking when was the last time you and I met. We've never met. We're going to be meeting, hopefully, God willing, this at the Fight Laugh Feast conference, man.
In 1 week.
So, in 1 week, yeah, I'll be there.
Oh.
And then we've got Grant telling us that every time Russell Moore's name comes to his head, he hears my voice. So there you go, man.
What does Rush says? He lives rent free in the Clintons' minds. You live rent free in the ERLC's minds with their $3 million press releases and retweets.
I'll tell you what, man. I've got some confirmation from a few different places this week that Gospel Coalition has uttered the name Robles numerous times in the past, and I've been a topic of conversation at least a number of times.
Good.
So that's good.
Yeah, you're good. I loved when you were having this conflict with Joe, and people were they were like concerned or they were feeling bad for you, and I'm like, what are you talking about? This is the greatest thing in the world. Congratulating you behind the scenes.
Listen. It's not fun being accused of being a Holocaust denier, but I don't really care. Like the people that listened to that, I don't care what their opinion is of me. But at the end of the day, like, you can't just say that about people online and be a Christian. Like, you just can't just do that. Mm-hmm. And so that's the only. I was totally fine that day. I was excited. I was excited.
Yeah. The people that are concerned about that don't understand how to win and what winning looks like, for sure.
Right.
But I want to say this though. I was actually really encouraged that Joe Carter called you. I saw that tweet, and he also tweeted it on his own profile.
Yeah.
And I have to say that was really encouraging. Not that I'm saying, okay, then there's no more beef between us, and
of course
we're not going to pick away at his terrible arguments anymore.
Yeah.
But that kind of just was nice, because I don't like being the guy who's always being critical. And so finding those kinds of things are nice.
Well, let me say this. I spoke with him for about 20 minutes this morning. He called me directly. And it was a very good conversation. You know what I mean? I feel like I understand where he's coming from a little bit better. I'm not going to reveal the details of the conversation, but I understand where he's coming from a little bit more. And he knows that my opinion of Gospel Coalition hasn't changed, and I'm still going to criticize where I think it's appropriate. But at least I know where he's coming from more, and I think he knows where I'm coming from more too. And I'll say this: he's a lot nicer on the phone. I'll give you that.
Nice.
A lot nicer than he appears on the internet, which I feel like a lot of people have said that about me as well. So that's fine. And then I'll also say that that the cool part about it was, we have kind of an open door at this point. I told him he could call me anytime that he thinks I crossed the line or whatever. I don't know if he ever will, but it's an open door, and I'm all about that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
That's great.
And he also said this is something that I think was interesting, because I told him at one point that people were encouraging me not to treat him like a Christian. And and I said, well, but I'm not going to do that, because you're a pastor. I'm accepting the profession of faith. And he told me that people have encouraged him to do the same. Why would you treat him like a Christian? And so listen. I understand that, you judge people by their works, show me your faith by your works, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, having the mark of a Christian, being baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, being a member in a church, and not being excommunicated, these are big things that we can't just throw those away. Does it mean that that's all that we look at? Of course, behavior matters. Of course it does. But at the end of the day, you still have a duty before God to do things a certain way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think, listen, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do. That's not in my authority, but that's why I would treat him like a brother, because I take the mark of baptism very seriously. And the fact that he's in a church, as far as I know, is a gospel preaching church, a legitimate church. And just because they might be more liberal than I would want them to be, I still have to take the reality of the situation seriously. So that's why.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's anything specifically Joe Carter that I would have a red flag about that, honestly. I don't agree with his positions. I think he makes some terrible arguments.
Yeah.
He obviously sins, like we've seen.
Like we do too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
And like we've both said, we want to be called out. We want to be able to apologize when we're wrong and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, he is in a different class than what I would say is like the critical race theory, the Black Lives Matter people that are almost they are teaching another religion. They're trying to pervert the gospel. Those are the people where I'm way more comfortable not treating as Christians.
Well, absolutely. It all depends on the details, right?
Yes.
I mean, not every social justice warrior is like that, but there are certainly some that definitely are. Yeah. Where they get upset when people are forgiven of sins. They get upset when remember that black guy who forgave that white woman who killed his brother or something? I don't know. Yeah. And they're like upset about that. And it's like, yeah, you're not a Christian, dude. You know what I mean? You're actually not a Christian. But like, it's different. Like, every person's different. And so, and I'm not expecting everyone to agree with me on that, but I would agree with you. Look, his behavior online was weird. The deleted tweets is definitely weird. You know what I mean? No question about that. But, you know, listen, we all misbehave at times, including myself. And I've been called out on misbehavior, and you know, maybe I apologized right away. Sometimes it takes me a little bit, and hopefully you don't judge my salvation based on that. So, you know, that's why I did that. That's why we had the conversation like brothers, and I appreciated it for it.
That's great.
For it.
Yeah.
And he didn't qualify his apology, nothing. It was just like, I take responsibility for it. It shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? And that was that. And I said, let's never speak of it again. And that was that.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I was totally encouraged by it. That was great.
Yeah, it was great.
And the Amber Geiger was the case that you were talking about.
Yeah.
All right, we got to go back to the comments. We got a good question. First, Matt, you're dangerously close to becoming post-mill. Man, you wish. No, I'm functionally post-mill. I'm still theologically pre-mill. The most important tweet of the night, Darren Doan, buying drinks at the conference.
Yeah.
Doubles because he's promised it twice.
That's right.
Hey, Darren, if you ever want to come on the show to promote that video, apparently you having a movie come out. You want to come on sometime, you're more welcome to. And this is a good question. Jacob says, I agree that they don't have the authority. We're talking of going back to the regulating church and worship and all that stuff. I agree they shouldn't be doing it. I agree that we should stand against it. But question, should we stand against regulations of similar kind that are already exist in the law?
Like what?
I don't know what your examples are, but my thought to this question is yes, of course we should stand against unrighteous laws, because and correct me if I'm wrong, AD, but just as we are supposed to be sanctifying ourselves and becoming more like Christ, we should be doing that in every area, including the laws of the land. We should be trying to be as Christ-like as possible and reforming and all of those things back to and getting as close to what God would want for a society. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there's some laws that are unjust that make sense to obey, like the tax rates and stuff like that. We don't, you know, look, when the robber comes to your house and says, "Give me all your money," it's not just, but it's still smart to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, correct.
So, like, yeah, you know, you don't have to defy every single unjust law, but there are laws that probably make sense to defy. Like, the one that comes to mind that I actually defied at one point in my life was a law that said you couldn't give homeless people like food in an unregulated way. Like, you had to get a license to do it or something ridiculous like that. Obviously I disobeyed that law, and I didn't even think twice, because who's going to arrest, and if someone arrest me for that, what's the big deal? So, like, you know, stuff like that. Like, yeah, you know, there's not every law has to be obeyed. Let's just face that. There's so many ridiculous laws out there, and you just have to pick your spots, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. But I think there's two things here. One is what should happen as like what ought to be like the utopia, and what our goal should be. And then practically what is worth disobeying and reforming and what is not.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, income taxes at the rates there are astronomical. Should we not pay them? No, we'll go to jail. That's not the battle to fight right now. Should we fight that battle in some way at some time in the future? Yeah, we probably should in our lifetimes. So there's two differences there. Yeah,
definitely. It kind of reminds me of the whole like debate about boycotts and stuff. Like, strategically, sometimes boycotts make sense, and sometimes it's just not. It doesn't make sense at all. So, you know, there's no like one rule. Do you need to boycott everything that everyone says at all times? Obviously not. But there might be a strategic reason why a boycott might be very effective. So it just depends.
Yeah. Sean said too many leaders need to get checked out for low T. Which, for those of you who don't know, that's low testosterone. And I would say, I don't think that's the problem. I think that's the symptom of the problem. I think there's too many unqualified leaders and people that have compromised and have sin in their lives. And that creates the low testosterone or the lack of being able to fight or have the resolve to do it.
So the way that you sin can reduce your testosterone. Are you a doctor?
No, but it can reduce your courage.
There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe it raises your estrogen.
I
don't know.
Oh my gosh, the feminists are going to come after us for that one. That's for sure.
Mark Deaver says, I signed a deal with the CIA and Agent Joe recruited him. That did not happen, but you would never know if it did. So
the CIA is pretty secretive about things, are they not?
Oh, man.
All right. So I want to go to our high-tech section of Reformgelical. We're going to show a video, and I believe it's going to work. I believe I figured out how to share sound. And 80, if you don't hear this, just flag it down, and then we'll end early and not have a whole segment of the show.
Hey, it happens.
I was given this clip by Tim Keller from 2 years ago, 2018. I didn't realize it was that old, but I think it's still relevant. And so I want to go through this, and there's a lot of things that need to be critiqued here. And I know he still believes this because it's consistent with tweets that we're dealing with today. And we'll show and we'll get into those tweets as well. So let's pull this up. Here we go. Look at that. All right. And I'm going to go. AD, if you want me to stop at any time during this, it's like a 2-minute clip. You know.
I know what to do.
Who's a pastor was talking for a Norwegian man who had just moved into his community and went to his church. And at one point he heard the pastor talking about the fact that we were all complicit in creating this narrative that black people are dangerous, etc. And so we're complicit in this. Afterwards, the Norwegian government said, no, I'm Norwegian. No, had nothing to do with it. And my
what a white devil.
I know.
Said,
the Vikings.
Studies have pretty much proven that if you have white skin, it's worth $1 million over a lifetime over somebody who doesn't have white skin. And that's because
how do I stop this?
I don't know.
I want to stop this.
You know, you can
technical difficulties.
If you have that
spacebar
of white skin right now, historical.
Let's just listen. Oh, there it is. There it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Hold on. Let me say something. Like, listen, let's just be honest. Like, that is white supremacy to the nth degree. White skin is worth $1 million. That's something. That's quite a claim.
Yeah, it is.
Studies
Absolutely.
have proven this, he said.
But it's like this is going to a crazy level where Norwegian white people are responsible for American sins.
American racism.
American racism.
Yes. So this is the narrative that he's talking about. Let's just not call it a narrative. Narrative is too kind. This is the delusion that he's spreading here. So white skin has been proven, he said, pretty much proven.
Yeah.
To be worth $1 million over a white person's lifetime, over and against a black person. And even if you're from Norway and you immigrated here last year and you're 50 or 100, who cares? You could be any age. You are actually still part of that system that gave everyone else $1 million in America on the backs of black people.
Yep.
That's quite a claim.
And so I
was
watching this, and my first thought was, why, as a pastor of Christ, are we even talking about this?
It's unbelievable.
Can't you just go back to the gospel coalition and be gospel centered?
Don't you? Whoa, Matt! Don't you remember this from Proverbs? Don't you remember?
White skin shall have 1 million talents. Do not waste it.
No, it's a good question though. Look, Matt. Listen, this stuff is allowed to be talked about, right? But as far as I'm aware, Tim Keller is not qualified to decide that studies have proven this. Number one, that's not what he does.
He said it was a friend pastor that's anonymous that said it.
Oh,
he's going to the ambiguity, so he can't get blamed for it.
It's pretty much his friend's pastor pretty much proved it.
Yeah,
he just proved it.
Yeah, he proved it.
But you're right though. But like, what? First of all, what does this have to do with anything biblical?
Oh. I have no idea. And I don't even know why it's necessarily a bad thing biblically.
Well, there you go. And then this is where can you finish the clip? Maybe he'll explain.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to let it
We should
ride.
talk about that.
I think we have a minute left. I'm going to let it ride because I'm not even sure how I stopped it.
Let it ride.
And you actually have to say, I didn't deserve this. And also, to some degree, I'm the product of, I'm sitting on the shoulders of other people who got that through injustice. So the Bible actually says, yes, you are involved in injustice. And even if you didn't actually do it, therefore you have a responsibility, not just to say, well, maybe if I get around to it, maybe we can do something about the poor people out there. No, you're part of the problem. If you do actually let your understanding of responsibility be shaped by the Bible instead of American individualism. Asians, I think I would say the same thing. In a way, I would say the Norwegians. The fact is that Asians and Latinos and African Americans, because of the background, because of the history difference, you actually are coming in at different levels.
Okay, just stop there.
Just stop. Okay. So there's obviously more. This is just a clip, right? So maybe he explained himself more, but just think about what it would take to prove this kind of stuff, right? And to prove that it was a problem and to prove that there was some kind of an injustice, because let's just say that white skin was worth $1 million. So you just get $1 million for being a white person over time. You know what I mean? You didn't earn it. Well, that's true. You didn't earn it. So let's just give it to him. The $1 million baby. When you're white, you come out and you got that pale white skin. It's kind of red when you first come out, but you get $1 million. You're $1 million baby. Okay. Who made you white? Who made you white?
Yeah, exactly right.
Why are you shaking your fist at God? If God made you the $1 million baby that he's claiming, let's just give it to him. We don't even have to refute any of that stuff. He didn't even present evidence, so I don't even care. $1 million baby, you came out of the womb. Who made you white? God gave you that $1 million. Right. So what's the problem? I'm confused as to what the problem is.
I don't know. And this is like the thing again, is when you start going off the rails like this, you make Jesus look like a pretty bad guy.
Yeah.
Because this just fits perfectly with the talent story. Some got 10, some got 5, one got 1, and he buried it in the ground. He was the evil person. So is the master evil for giving the $1 million to the white people?
Yes. Apparently.
And what's more disturbing to me about this is now it's not even just an American white problem anymore. It's every single white person. So by definition, it is not a cultural argument they're making. Right. It's not this power structure and cultures. It's literally your white skin. It's a
racist argument. Yes. Listen to this. So you're on the 100% right track. We didn't talk about this beforehand. We never really do, but we think very similarly because it is like the talents thing. So in other words, okay, so white skin is worth $1 million. Lots of people would want to quibble with that. Whatever, who cares? It's worth $1 million. Black skin, let's just say, is worth $100,000. I don't know what he would say, but this is his own racist system, not mine. So all this stuff. So God made you a certain way. Now let's think about this in a smaller level, because when you think of things in just terms of white people, black people, sometimes you get mad and frustrated. But think about it in like a family, right? So God makes some people born into royalty, and then he makes other people born into a mud hut with no roof and no food, right? So okay. So that's two different situations. Neither one of those people had anything to do with one another. They're just, one was born to a poor family, one was born to a rich family. So what is the problem there? Whose problem is that? Because it's not the people. They had nothing to do with one another. Right. And we don't even know what like the poor person could just be poor just randomly. He could be a very righteous person and just poor, or he could be a very evil person who's made very bad decisions in his life, and that's why he's poor. Like, we don't know any of the facts. What he's trying to do here is just say, but it's not even, so it's unjust.
Right.
And that is so far from the biblical witness that I can't even, once, like you said, Matt, once you go off the rails here, you start to make Christ look like the puppet master of injustice.
Logically, you have to admit that.
Right.
You have to. And it's funny, like as you were saying that, it reminded me of this time the Pharisees came to Jesus and showed him the crippled guy. I forgot what it was. Maybe he had leprosy. Maybe he was blind. I forgot what it exactly was. Who sinned, him or his father?
Right.
And that's kind of like the similar thing. It's not a illness or a disease. It's skin. Okay. Who sinned? Was it you who oppressed people, or did your father oppress people to get the privilege? It's the same thinking.
Now, there's an element in here that a Christian would want to agree with. So if you're a Christian who was born $1 million baby, again, we're just going with this fantasy because I'm fairly certain if you actually looked into this, whatever study he said that proves this, it actually probably doesn't prove this. But let's just go with it. Let's go with the fantasy, that $1 million baby when you're white. So there's some truth here that if you are the $1 million baby, that you have a responsibility, just like in the parable of the talents. So it's like the guy who got the 10 talents, God gave it to him because, or the master gave it to him, presumably because he knew he was capable of handling 10 talents. And so he did, and he got a return on it. And that return, what a lot of commentators think about it is, we're supposed to bear fruit, right? We're supposed to be, we are required to help the poor. We are required to assist our fellow man and stuff like that. Like those are our requirements of a righteous person. No question about that. Nobody denies that.
Right.
But so there's truth there, but the fact that you have the $1 million is not an injustice. Like that's just so evil. That is such an evil way to think. Like God's giving you money and he expects a return. But Tim is saying you have the money because you were involved in injustice, even if you had nothing to do with it. You're from a different country.
Right.
Like this goes so far. It's probably one of the worst presentations of this I could imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
He bends over backwards to make it so racist. It's like he could maybe he might as well have said, what if he was from another planet and he didn't even know anything that happened on Earth and he's white? Oh no, you're part of it.
Or what about this? What if it was like he lived, let's say, 4,000 years ago,
right?
And he was a Jewish person, and he was talking with Joshua and Caleb, and you guys have really oppressed the people of Canaan. Right. You are unjust for your oppression.
Yeah,
there's so many stories like that in the Bible where God ordered them and commanded them to do things which benefited them.
Yeah.
And they weren't unjust because they were benefactors of it.
Like it's so crazy, and especially so when you think of the American situation, because when you think of poverty in America, there are some poor people in America, right? Yeah. But in general, poverty in America isn't even close to what poverty looks like elsewhere, and so this is so twisted. It's so self-centered to be like we're like the epicenter of injustice here. And it's like because white people are the $1 million babies here in the United States and black people aren't quite that there yet. This is so racist, by the way. Like everything about this is just racist. So that means that there's some kind of supreme injustice going on here. And if you take that logic and you keep going, it's like, well, America's really rich. And so then all Americans actually are oppressors. All Americans are oppressors because, have you ever been to Ethiopia? I mean, they don't have anything. Mm-hmm. So it's like if you take the consistency here, it's like, well, actually blacks in America aren't oppressed. They're actually oppressors. And everyone's just on the spectrum of oppressor or oppressed somewhere. It's just so weird. It's so God's listen, there's one simple thing that I can tell everybody if you want to know if someone's telling you nonsense or if someone's telling you something biblical, God's law and God's justice, it can't be reduced to absurdity, even in theory. It's so perfect, it can't even theoretically be absurd. So, so if someone says something to you that if you follow the logic, it renders it null, it renders it absurd. It's not God's logic. Right. It's not God's logic. This is how we know, and I know people disagree with me on this, but this is how we know that tithing is actually on the net, not the gross. Because if it was on the gross and your government stole 90%, 92% of your income, well, you couldn't possibly tithe anymore. It wouldn't be possible. Right. So God's law can't be reduced to absurdity, even in theory.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good point, AD.
Yeah.
That's why you get paid the big bucks on this show.
That's right.
So there's been a good conversation going on in the comments. Person is saying that Tim is a theistic evolutionist, which to me just makes all the sense in the world, because when you start fudging in the beginning, then everything else becomes fudgeable.
Right.
If you don't hold to God created everything as he said, then nothing's as he said. And this all makes sense. And I just bring that up as a warning to people, is there's a reason that was such a strong battle years ago. It's because that is a foundational point that if you remove that, then anything goes. And it makes sense also with, I did a show on this actually, Phil, the VeggieTales guy, Phil Vischer.
Yeah. Fisher.
Yeah. I don't know if Timothy Keller said this, but he quoted him as saying it, and I have no reason to doubt that he did. He said that Timothy Keller could interpret righteousness in the Old Testament as disadvantaging yourself to advantage someone else. That's how he is defining righteousness nowadays. He did that in one of his sermons, where to be a righteous person is, by Hebrew understanding, to disadvantage yourself and put someone else in advantage. And so his argument then is, therefore, the righteous people will give advantage to other people in your community. And it's like, that's not even close to what righteousness means. And you just wonder, how do you get that? And it makes sense. Well, he doesn't believe in Genesis 1. And it's like, well, how can he believe in these weird philosophies of man? Well, he doesn't believe in Genesis 1.
Right. Yeah, well, it certainly seems like these are connected things. Let's just be honest. And somebody in the comments pointed out that evolution is a racist theory, just automatically, just the way it works. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would agree with that. Do I think Tim is making those connections? Probably not. But I just couldn't imagine thinking that I was on the moral high ground of racism and race relations and utter a statement like, I don't know what it is, but just like white skin is just like worth so much. And like blacks, I guess, haven't been able to figure it out, like how to make their skin worth anything. Like It's so racist, man. It is so racist.
It is.
It's racist.
And I don't know if he makes the connections, but I definitely am saying he's a racist.
Right. There are connections.
This clip, he's a racist. Because when you assign sins or negativity or deficiencies in somebody just because of their skin color,
right?
I don't know what's more racist than that.
I don't know. I don't know. And the thing is, like, you know, I've explained my own situation. You know, I'm a Latino, and you know, my family came to the United States, you know, later than a lot of white families, and so it makes sense that we'd be behind on the wealth curve unless something that, you know, happens where, you know, someone gets a nice pop of income and wealth and stuff like that. That's kind of stuff happens all the time. Nobody's stopping me from getting that, and stuff like that. So it just makes sense. Like, yeah, we haven't been here for generations, and so we have what you could expect we might have. But the idea that, like, no, it's not any of that. It's not timing. It's not God's timing and putting you places. It's not God's blessing either, because we know that God blesses people and with the gospel and stuff. But it can't be that. No, it's not that. It's white skin. Then, but again, like, who gave you that skin? Mm-hmm. So it is God. It always goes back to God's blessing. So, like, we have to. Are we really going to put God in the position of like the puppet master of oppression? Is that really what we're going to do here? Because logically, you'd have to.
Right. Yeah. A hard pass on that one. Yeah. And this is a good point too with, like, so I think there's a stronger argument to make that what you do in your life and your faithfulness and how much you obey God and align with just how he created the world in natural law and obey God in the biblical law is going to be a blessing for generations to come. And I don't think it's a white versus black argument, but I think there could be a strong European versus the rest of the world argument, which just happens to be mostly white people in Europe, where they have the Renaissance, where they have the Reformation, where they have Christianity be the language, where you come over to the United States and you somewhat are agreeing on a Christian biblical foundation. That would make logical sense from even just reading the Bible, that those who are obedient are going to be blessed. That doesn't mean, again, the fallacy of a zero-sum game, that therefore you're oppressing others.
Right.
maybe there's something to African nations fighting against each other's tribes and doing witchcraft and doing all of these different things and sacrificing children and all of this stuff. Maybe there's negative consequences to that.
Nobody wants to talk about that stuff, but the reality is, of course, there's something to it. Of course, there's something to it. When you're doing, witchcraft and visiting juju priests and stuff like that, like God doesn't bless your land. He actually curses your land when that happens. And we know what those curses look like. It looks like occupation, economic turmoil, droughts, disaster of epic proportions. So we know what that looks like. And the reality is that God can do that to white people too. And I personally think that he's in the process of doing that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like, it's just so crazy. And again, nothing about this kind of a fantasy that Tim Keller is spinning here is consistent. Nothing about it is consistent. Nothing about it makes sense. It's popular, and he learned it probably when he was a college boy. And this is what he's decided to kind of make his ministry about at the end of his life. It's very pathetic. It's very sad. And to see him try so hard to put this narrative forward and make it fit in the Bible, it's just it's lame, man. It's super lame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's sad. I heard that apparently he's going through chemo right now. So
that's right. Yeah.
Apparently it's not looking good.
Yeah.
But the things that he said in the past that were good, that benefited us, that we liked, that we thought were good, he's not going to be remembered for that.
Sadly, no.
He's not. And that is
Sadly,
very
no.
sad.
Yeah.
So, okay, now the last thing I wanted to hit on Timothy Keller, and let me just say this, is I don't like just beating up on one person, but he's kind of like the guy, right? I don't know, he's the guy, right? Like if you think Christianity and you think about engaging the world and the Reformed guy, I don't know if anyone's more popular to the world and the most Christians than Timothy Keller.
Yeah.
And the fact that the guy is saying this stuff, there's something wrong here, guys. There's something really, really wrong here.
There is. I honestly struggle to explain it, but I know that there were signs of this kind of stuff way before I knew about it. But when I discovered Tim Keller, I was a new Christian, and I think a lot of people, that's how they discovered him, because he wrote a very kind of popular level apologetics book when most people didn't really know about apologetics. And people really liked that, and they kind of just went with it from there. That's kind of how it all happened, as far as I know.
Yeah. So, okay, here is Marcus Pittman shared this tweet before it was deleted, because Timothy Keller is arguing points and screenshotting points from a George Soros funded think tank called urban.org. For those of you listening, I'm sharing the screenshot of it, urban.org. If you want to see the tweet itself, you can go to our YouTube because it's been deleted. But Timothy Keller says, if you're looking for a basis for talking about racial wealth gaps, see this research. If you're looking for a discussion on what caused those wealth gaps, consider slavery, Jim Crow laws, lynchings, and bank policies between 1865 and 1965 as causes, among others.
Yeah.
It's the same narrative as 2 years ago. It's the same. This is his track. This is what he's preaching.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that necessarily he's not a Christian or he's preaching heresy but this is what he's focusing on. This is what his life is about right now. Mm-hmm. It's not about the gospel.
But right. And okay. And so, but let's just take this on its own, because on its own, this is a nice factoid. Fine. So racial wealth gaps. So there were slavery. And so black people were here for a long time, but they weren't getting an income from their slavery. That's bad. We don't like that. Jim Crow laws, that wasn't nice, so we don't like that. Lynchings, bank policies, let's just give it all to him, right? Let's just give it all to him. Fine. All of this can help explain racial wage gaps, or not wealth gaps. Mm-hmm. That all makes logical sense. Fine. But the thing is, that's not all he's saying. What he's saying now is, and because of this, someone from Norway who had nothing to do with this, who immigrated here last year in 2019, is now an oppressor. Probably, unless they vote Biden. You know what I mean? That's the basic narrative here. And what I find distasteful about Tim Keller, and I don't want to beat up on him too much more today. Well, we only have 10 minutes left, so might as well.
Yeah, just have at it.
But the thing is, like, he puts this air of, I'm above the political fray. I'm not going to get involved in that. There's a different way. It's not this way. It's not that way. It's a diagonal way. That's what he said today. It's a diagonal. And nobody knows what that means. Nobody knows what that means. No, I find that kind of talk just distasteful. Yeah. If you want me to vote for Joe Biden, I would respect you a lot more if you just said it. Vote for Joe Biden unless you're a racist bigot, because he's going to fix all these inequalities with welfare, with whatever, you know.
And all you have to do is sacrifice your children for it.
All you have to, right? At least I'd respect the honesty, right? Like right. Some evangelicals are doing that. You know, there's the one ERLC guy that's now campaigning for Biden. You know, like I respect
public policy ERLC guy.
Right. Yeah. The $10 they put into that budget. See, he was no the guy responsible. Right. He couldn't do anything. Well, at least he got a cushy salary, probably. But anyway. But the point is, like, at least I can respect the honesty. I think it's horrible, but it's like, thanks for telling me, you know, instead of saying like this nonsense where it's like, well, you see, you know, I'm above the fray. It's a diagonal way. But really, we know exactly what you're doing. You're just trying to ease everyone's conscience to do what you've probably done for decades and vote Democrat. Yeah. I just don't have any respect for language that's imprecise. Yeah. He's doing this thing where it's so annoying, where he's like teasing these articles. It's coming out soon. It's coming out soon. But let me give you a hint. It's not this way. It's not that way. It's a diagonal. And it's like, nobody knows what that means. Why? That used to work on me. That used to work on me when I was a new Christian. That yeah. Mr. Miyagi stuff. I was like, wow, it's so wise. No, it isn't. The Bible doesn't speak that way. Why do you speak that way? Right. This is so crazy. But anyway, so yeah, that's all I want to say about Tim Keller, unless you have something else. But yeah, it's very. That little diagram there, it's like especially when you cite it from a Soros Foundation, you know what's being actually sold here. It's not just the info. The info is great. Thank you so much for the info. I didn't know we had Jim Crow laws until today. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Or slavery. Like, we never talk about it anymore.
Never heard of that. What do you mean? But it's the solutions, and that's where Tim Keller's weakest. He says, well, the Bible says I should be against abortion, but it doesn't tell me how to solve it. It's like, but it does. Yeah. But it does. There's a big book of law. In fact, there's 5 of them. There's 5 books of law, and it tells you what to do in these situations.
And the problem is it's so simple, you can't write a book about it and make millions.
Yeah. You can't start saying stupid stuff like diagonal. It's a diagonal. It's so it's just so crazy. It's like, okay, if you're showing partiality, stop showing partiality. That's how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very simple.
I don't know. It's very simple, but it's yeah. You want to be real cynical about it. I kind of agree. Like, you can't write a big book about that.
Right. Yeah. And I have learned to be very cynical, and I actually tried to be optimistic this week. Where it was with what was his name? Some pastor. He's super woke guy. He's Joe Carter's pastor. What's his name?
David Platt.
Thank you very much. Yep. He had a tweet where he denounced Black Lives Matter. And I was so happy. I tweeted it. Thank you, David Platt. That is awesome. It's encouraging. Apparently that was like from a month ago, thinking, man, he's on the right step on the path. And then last week he had a sermon talking about critical race theory. And I was like, I can't be optimistic. I will look like a fool nowadays. I have to be cynical.
Can I tell you what I think that's all about? I know other people have said this, but I want to say it on the show. Is that okay?
Yep, please.
Okay, so my brother saw that, and my brother saw Tim Keller's article about, or no, not Tim Keller's, but Gospel Coalition had an article a few weeks ago about being against critical theory, and Matt Chandler put out a video how he's against, or he's sorry for some of the things he said, and he's against critical theory. And Matt Hall from Southern Seminary said the same thing. He's against critical theory. Here's what's going on here. This is the new play. I personally believe, I have no evidence of this, but just the timing of all this makes me believe they had a meeting, and they said they have to, by name, denounce critical theory. But what they didn't have to do is actually denounce any particular part of it. So what you do is you say, I'm against critical theory because it's a godless ideology, which it is. It came from somewhere besides the Bible, which it does. But then you go back and you start teaching the exact same things you were teaching before, and just say it's biblical. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm against critical theory, but all whiteys are involved in injustice, and Norwegians too. And it's like, yeah, but that's part and parcel of critical theory. So that's what's going on now. That's the new play. It's like,
so they're playing a pro-life play. It's a pro-life organization.
right. It's very similar. So yeah, that's what's going on. Everyone and their mother is coming out saying they're against critical theory. Great. That's very nice to be against critical theory, but you actually have to be against the components of it, the objectionable components of it as well. And nobody has rejected that was at first embracing it. In fact, they doubled down. They've continued to teach it. And I intended to do a review of a Matt Chandler thing this week, but I got distracted by this drama, which, we'll see if I get back to it. But in that thing, that's exactly what he does. He says, look, I'm sorry, I should have been more clear with my previous statements. Of course, he doesn't tell you which previous statements, just some previous.
Very abstract.
Leave you guessing. And then he goes on to teach the same objectionable stuff he was teaching from forever. That's not helpful. That actually just muddies the waters further, and it makes you look guilty as sin. Let's just be honest. Oh,
yeah, for sure. And that, though, is really encouraging to me, and it should be encouraging to all of us, because this is what it tells me, that we're winning.
Amen.
That it tells me that we're making a difference. And oftentimes I get so many emails, and I'm sure you do too, AD. My church went woke. They're talking about being woke. They're doing all this stuff. And I don't know what to do. I can't find a church that's even meeting. I can't find a church that's not talking about critical race theory. This should be an encouragement to every single one of you that has emailed me. You're not alone. You're making a difference, and it's not time to let up. We got to keep fighting, because like AD is saying, they're just hiding. They're no longer bragging about it, but they're not changing. And so we got to keep pushing. This is not time to let your foot off the pedal, but it's time to downshift and push farther on the pedal so that we can continue to make inroads in this battle.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, man, you're 100% right. It is extremely encouraging. I'll tell you something else that's encouraging is the fact that these people from on high are starting to interact with their detractors. Like, people like me, people like John Harris, people like you, people like Marcus. We're getting interaction. That's something that in the past they just ignore you, pretend you didn't exist. We knew that they watched us, but they pretended like we didn't exist. And now they're fighting back, which is good because that opens doors here. And we know that there's something happening. Now, where this is going to go, I don't know. But the fact that they're listening and the fact that they realize that they just can't get away with doing whatever the heck they want anymore, that's a good thing, man. That's a good thing, because we can put on this podcast for pennies on the dollar that they put out their content, and people will listen to it. You know what I mean? And we just figured out how to do audio today.
Kind of. We couldn't start and stop it where we wanted to, but you could hear it.
But people aren't looking for big production quality. I mean, look, if we can get the production quality up on this, we will. We're going to do whatever we can to do that. But the thing is, right now, people are finding that presentation style where you're talking about diagonals and nobody knows what the heck you're saying. They find that distasteful. It's very annoying, and nobody knows what the heck you're saying.
Right.
And what they like is people that are just willing to take a microphone and just tell them in a straightforward way what they think, and they can judge it. It doesn't mean you have to agree with us, but at least you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm trying to say, instead of talking about diagonals and other kinds of Mr. Miyagi nonsense.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
geometry could be as confusing as calculus, but Timothy Keller was able to do that.
He figured it out, man. He figured it out. He figured out a way. But I think, and you hit this point all the time, Matt, about PhDs, right? Yeah. You always crack the jokes about PhDs online, and it's so true. Like when before you even look at the Twitter handle, if that guy has a PhD or not, based on how nonsensical what they're saying is.
Yes.
It's so unbelievable. You can do it with the pronouns, and you can do it with the PhD.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and I absolutely love it. It's a great game I play. He's talking about, is this so stupid to be a PhD or not? And you're supposed to guess if this person has a PhD in their profile or not. And most people are 100%. I have yet to see someone guess and be wrong. So either they're cheating or it's really obvious. I don't know. There is one comment I wanted to hit really quick. It's kind of going back on something previously we talked about. And it's coming from Sean. And he says, I wonder if the case could be made that American society adhered to theonomy and was blessed. And I'll just say, because I've been thinking about this for a few minutes, and then AD, I'll let you finish and then we'll close on this.
Sure.
I'm coming around to the mind and the opinion that we've always lived in a theonomy one way or another.
Sure.
Our laws are always shaped and based on who our God is.
Sure.
It might not be a Christian God. It might not be the
Yeah.
Muslim God, but it certainly is a God. It might be the statist God, the humanist God.
Well,
It could be any of those.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, because if you think about how you come up with laws, however you decide what the law is, that's the lawgiver, and that's who God is. That's who you serve. That's who you worship.
Mhm.
So you're living for that entity. Whoever you obey, that's who you serve.
Yeah.
So that's true. But I think is Sean asking? Is there a case that American to like godly
we were
theology,
prosperous
like
because of it.
biblical theology?
I think he was saying, like, is there a case to be made that we were a theonomist country in the beginning, which made us prosperous?
Well, I think so. I don't think so. Okay, that's a very good question. So here's my take on that. Just thinking about it for 5 seconds.
You're at your best at this
The nation was a Christian nation. There were a lot of Christians acting Christianly, and so naturally, many of their laws were built around the law of God. But I think that my opinion on the Constitution is that it actually abandoned that process. It abandoned that project altogether. Some people disagree with me on that, but it didn't abandon it completely because they were still Christians. So they still had a framework that was basically Christian, but because it wasn't overtly Christian, like Christ is king in America, something like that. The Bible is our standard or some statement like that. There's nothing in there like that. So it was transformed very quickly. It turned into a monster very quickly. And so I think that the early blessings of the country were from God, definitely, because we had tons of Christians here acting Christianly, and we had local communities that had strong churches and stuff like that acted very Christianly. But I don't think that the project went very well.
Yeah.
And it kind of quickly went off the rails. And I think that the Civil War, for example, was a curse from God. And a lot of people think it was because of the sin of the slave trade. I think that probably is accurate. Obviously we don't know the mind of God and how these are things that he does in the secret. But I think, yeah. So I think you could make a case for that. But you'd have to also acknowledge that the project went south very quick.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems is they took for granted the Christian culture.
I think,
and they didn't think they needed to solidify that in any kind of law.
I think so, and I think that there were some potential people that really didn't want to solidify it into law, but the rest of the people, because they could just assume we would always be a Christian nation, we weren't going to have a Muslim Supreme Court justice. They didn't have to even think about that. Right. When they were talking about religious tests, they were saying, like, okay, so we're not going to discriminate between Baptist and, Presbyterian, or like this kind of Presbyterian or that kind of Presbyterian. Like, I don't think they were thinking like Satanist.
Yeah. A Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to be on the court.
Right. We're not. Yeah. They weren't thinking that a demonized Jewish lady was going to be on the court like that. They weren't thinking in those terms. No. So I agree. Like that's probably what happened. They probably just assumed that it would be like this forever. And that was a bad assumption.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Historian A.D. Robles, Matt Williams, thank you for listening to our show.
Someone's gonna set me straight on that fake history that I just gave you.
Maybe we should do that drunk history show one. Did you ever see that show? It was really good. Oh man, no, we would never do that.
No,
you'd have to get drunk, but it's still a funny show. If you want to support us so we don't have to go on shows like the Drunk History, you can go to the patreon.com/reformgelical. You can share the show with your friends. It really helps us grow. The show has been growing like crazy. I'm so thankful for all of you guys. Appreciate it. Saying goodnight for AD and myself. We'll talk to you next week. God bless.
God bless.